Hey guys, happy Friday. Welcome back to another show of Near Nirvana. And today we have an awesome guest, Jason Douglas, with us.
Hi,
Yay!
Yay,
everybody.
Jason!
And we have Laura, Jen with us, and myself. So excited. I haven't been here for a few shows. I missed it. I
Yeah,
missed
welcome
every
back.
yeah. And we're gonna have an exciting show today. But first, want to thank our sponsors, Bird City Comics, for being awesome store and sponsoring the show. Used Nirvana for a little bit of a discount, and make sure you guys download the app, sign up for the text notifications, which is amazing. And if you have any questions, you can text back. Our amazing other sponsor, Nimesh. Oh my god, I have to tell you guys something about Nimesh after I'm done with the sponsors. Thank
Oh,
you,
okay.
Nimesh. And also a cover price. Use Nirvana 14 for $1.99 a month for new subscribers. Is it $1.99, right? Am I right?
It's 90 for 1
That was
month of unlimited
$1.99.
membership.
I
Yeah.
thought it was $1.99. I'm adding to it, I
Even
guess.
cheaper, Lucy,
Tip.
even cheaper.
Oh, even better. You see, and they have. If you haven't checked out their website, they have amazing stuff up there. Um, the new weekly new comic books, and they have market report. That bunch of awesome stuff. So go check the cover price. And let's get started. Let's see. First, I'll tell you, Namesh, I received the box that he sent for the birthdays of April at my house, which was Sam, Mariah, and
Oh
Lennox.
my
And
gosh.
I recorded. I will post it because he's like, make sure you record it.
Oh, now I
It
want
was
to
pretty
know. I'm
fun.
curious.
It was pretty fun. I will post it soon after we're done. It was pretty fun. Thank you, Nimesh. I really appreciate it. And first, let's get started with our guest, Jason. So you are our Nirvana Nexus.
Jason, who the
And
hell are you? You're a
yes,
writer,
of
apparently?
course,
They
let us
tell me
know.
that.
That's what
Every
they
once in a while,
say.
somebody will mention that, and I'll believe them a little bit. Yeah. I'm a 23-year veteran public school teacher. That's the first career. That's the day job. Husband, father of three. So the writing thing. I mean, look, we're going to talk about Parallel. I think a little bit. That was
Mhm.
my first book. And it's out in a special edition right now. It's out in the world. A lot of different ways you can get it. I'm going on a little spring tour, kind of promoting it and selling it and signing it. But like when we get into it, we'll talk about how kind of like at the core, one of those main themes is that existential dread of time passing, right? And like Landon, the main character, is going through what the kids are calling the quarter life crisis. There might just have been a slight midlife crisis on my own part that finally got me off my butt and kind of forced me into that probably childhood dream since I was 12 years old to write a comic book. It just happened to take a few extra decades. So the writing thing, as passionate as I am about it, it's kind of late in the game, right? Like this is kind of coming as a rush. It actually, this is okay. I'll tell you this. It kind of came around back door. Like, yeah, it was a dream forever, forever, forever. But there was nothing that would have forced me. The catalyst didn't come to take that big scary leap to actually do what it is that is your dream, right? And yet I was still building up my writing chops for like the last almost 10 years now without really knowing that's what I was leading up to because I've been running drama clubs at the middle school I taught at for the last 10 years and then the elementary school before
Is
that.
that what you teach? Is drama?
Well, no. I mean, when I taught fourth grade, it's everything, right? It's
That's
all
true. Okay.
subjects. But then the last 10 years has been eighth grade English.
Oh,
And
nice.
so like the drama club it's one of our clubs, right? It's all of my kids who are not going to play sports. It's all my kids who are drama nerds, but also my kids who just, it's a safe place, right? It's where all of our outcasts come. It's where all of our outsiders come and we find a place to do some stuff together. But in both of those drama clubs, elementary school and middle school, there was zero budget, right? There's no plays are expensive, stuff stuff you buy online is not cheap. And just kind of through blissful ignorance, I was like, well, how hard can it be to write skits and write plays? And I just started doing it. And it was kind of fun and we had a really good time. And I had a couple of plays published and that have been performed in other states now. And I kind of like built up these chops. And then I did the exact same thing a couple years ago. And one summer I sat down because like the world came together and it was time to do this thing where it was time to write my comic. And that same blissful ignorance, right? Maybe a little bit of irrational confidence, like, well, I can write plays. I can write an hour-long stage play without batting an eye. How hard could it be to write a comic script?
That's good reasoning.
If I only knew how hard it was, it probably would have scared me off. But I sat down and I just did it. And that turned into this. And it's been a heck of a journey ever since, that's for sure.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about this Parallel.
So you're looking at the core of the story is kind of like a dark sci-fi twisted tale, kind of in the vein of an episode of Black Mirror. And it begs the question of you, the reader, what price would you pay for a second chance at all the dreams you thought you left behind forever?
Oh, wow.
So Landon, our protagonist, he's pushing 30. As I said, he's having what those kids are calling the quarter-life crisis, right? All that dread of time passing. You've deferred your dreams, that thing we all do in our early 20s. We've got all the time in the world, right? And then suddenly that time, a lot of those dreams, the door seems like it's been shut on. And for most of us, I mean, we go through some version of that, right? We all have that at some point in our life. It's a universal kind of, but a lot of us, it's anxiety, maybe even depression. For Landon, it manifests in hearing voices and seeing visions of a parallel version of himself reaching out and offering him that second chance that he thought was gone forever. Unfortunately for Landon, probably not in his best interest mentally and physically to pay that price. It gets pretty dark and hairy in the second half. A lot of tension, a lot of high stakes choices he's got to make to pursue that dream that he thought was gone. So the story behind the book is I got it to a publisher in a very atypical way. This book did not come to be the way comics are made in the 21st century. That's why the Kickstarter we're going to talk about today is such a big deal to me and so terrifying to me, because Parallel was my first book, but this is my first crowdfunded thing. This got picked up because, again, blissful ignorance. I don't know how comics are made in the 21st century. Ladies, I wrote half the script. I decided, there's nothing. It's just paper. And I decided that what I would do is I would grab one of those old school, the manila file folders from schools. You remember those? The teachers got all their files in it. I would grab an old school folder. I would put a copy of the script in it. I put a nice little cover letter. I grabbed these lovely little paper clips out of my teacher's desk, and I took it to a convention. I was just going to start handing it around like that's how you do comics. It's not. And I walk up to this.
That's kind of like if a script for like, I assume for like a show or movie, whatever, that's kind of like you hand out a script.
Well, I looked online. I mean, I did my almost, I know how modern technology works, due diligence. And I looked online and like nobody wants your unsolicited script, right? And the few companies that will even take unsolicited pitches don't want a script. They want art, and you don't want my art. So I didn't know what to do, but I wasn't ready to give up. So I'm walking around with these folders at this convention, and literally the first table I walk up to happens to be Source Point Press, which is at the time a big up and coming indie. And the first person I lock eyes with just happens to be the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the company. And I just walk up to him and I hand him the thing and I just start yapping away like that's the way you're supposed to do it. Seriously, I preach to my children about picking up on, body language signals and cues from other people. So your social interactions, they learn to be functioning adults. I am completely oblivious to this man looking at me going, what are you doing? And I just keep on going. And eventually I wore him down with enthusiasm and verbosity. And he goes, all right, I'm going to stop you. This is really weird. It's like you're trying to pitch me a comic like it's 1970. It's like you don't understand. And I'm like, no, I don't. And he said, but I like the cut of your jib. He literally said, I like the cut of your jib. And he said, I'm going to read this. You come back and see me tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. And I came back the next day at the con, and he's like, all right, go back and write me the other half. And it just happened. And they set me up with an artist, and they set me with an editor. I think he sensed that I had no idea what I was doing. He liked the story, but knew that comics as much as I have been a fan for decades and decades, I don't know about this side of it.
They work with Garrett Gunn, so I mean,
Right. Who is just the wildest idea, man. Oh, he named, well, you guys know Garrett. He named one of my variants. We'll talk about this when we get to Kickstarter. He has the best name for one of the variants for the Kickstarter that goes live.
Gosh.
We'll get there.
Oh,
so like this book, check this out. This book gets made, blood, sweat, and tears, right? First time I've worked with an editor, because like when you get a play published from one of the big companies, there's no editor. They either want it or they don't. That's why so few get published every year. First time with an editor, I get really precious. I throw a couple of tantrums. How dare you change my stuff? Of course, the editor is right every time. But Parallel, the first pressing, drops right at the beginning of shutdown in the first pandemic. And it flops hard. Okay. But here comes that blissful ignorance again. I don't know because nobody's told me. I am like, at this point, I am the most 12-year-old 40+ person on the planet. Because I am just like, I don't know how anything works. But people look at you and go, you're middle-aged. You're supposed to know how at least some things work. And I don't. And I don't know that what you're supposed to do is either move on to your next project if like writing is your thing and comics are your profession, or you give up and say dream pursued and now we move on to whatever. And instead, I go off and I do over the next 18 months, because there's no signings, everything got canceled, there's no cons. I do 75 interviews on shows like yours without knowing that that's not something that people do. And word of mouth starts to spread and it catches on. SourcePoint has to reach out to shops and buy back copies to meet the online demand. And then cons come back, the book sells out. And because of that word of mouth build, Parallel garners 2 Ringo Award nominations, one for Best Writer, one for Best Single Issue or Story. Which meant I got to go out to Baltimore to my first away con. I got to sell out a con exclusive print of the book because the book was gone. We had to like panic and figure out like a new cover and everything. And I got to get up on stage in front of like heroes of mine from 20 years before, give a speech, present some awards, and then sit down and gracefully lose both of my categories to the guy who read Batman. Because who am I compared to Batman?
Wait, Jason, when was this? What
so that's October 21.
I was there.
You were at
I was at the Ringo Awards.
You were at Ringo?
Yeah.
October 21.
I probably saw you graciously lose.
This is October 21.
Yes.
We had the private ceremony and the public wasn't there. It was just us at the
and they made us those the dessert was the only thing I ate on that plate, that chocolatey stuff for the dessert.
Yes.
Because it was like a dinner. It was like a sit-down dinner that you went to. And
and with the swag bags, I've never felt more important.
I know the swag bags were pretty cool. I think I still have mine in.
You got to see me go up there and give my speech. Like some people cried because I was talking about
that's awesome.
Because Mike Ringo, you know, was huge in my classroom with the 4th graders because his book, Telos, was literally the very first comic I brought to my 4th graders that really changed the whole stigma about being an under your grade level reader. Like it was the most brutal thing, I'll tell you, in my classroom. It was breaking my heart for my first couple of years when I was like still in my 20s. And you have these kids who are like a grade level, 2 grade levels, 4 grade levels behind. And because there's such a stigma of reading a baby book, you got kids reading like 1,000-page book upside down, backwards, as opposed to actually reading something at their grade level and making progress. And I couldn't crack the code. And then I was like, it's been in front of me forever, the thing that I'm a fan of. And I started bringing comics in the room. And then Scholastic bought Bone. And I just flooded my room with that. And suddenly it didn't matter because there's a comic out there. Once that explosion happened in the early 2000s, there's a comic out there at every reading level, and there's no stigma with comics with kids. And so you could put something in front of a kid's hand at a 1st grade reading level, and they were proud of it because it was a comic and it was cool. And Mike's books were like the first ones that came into the room, and like that was really my impassioned speech up there on stage. And like his brother came up to me afterwards and said I was weeping like a baby because like his books changed kids' lives. You know, as much as I might have been the vessel for it, it was a bunch of creative people that were actually in that room today. Like David Peterson was there, who does Mouse Guard, and his book. I mean, he came to my classroom and signed books for kids and stuff. And it was just
cool.
I remember you on stage now.
You do. It was so cool to be up there and share that story. Okay, it just hit you.
It just hit me because you're right. There was and then somebody came on right after you. Maybe that was the Mike guy. Was it Mike that came on after you?
Well, Mike Ringo is who is the award's named after, and he passed away.
After you.
Oh, who was after me? Well, I mean, I was up there with a co-presenter. Who was after me? I can't remember.
I was a little tipsy, but this is all coming back to me now.
Yeah, but it was like an amazing experience, and it was like this. It was my first con. I'll tell you, it was my first con where, like, because momentum had built to that point, right? And it was like everything was new, everything was a first experience, but this was the first con that I went to that people came there to see me.
That's cool. Were you collecting comic books before you started doing all this? Are you already time? Were you like? Because I know, like, what I've seen is like you're part of this comic. Not only you're doing, you're doing a comic book, but you're part of the comic community. You collect and all this. So were you kind of like in that moment?
Look, I didn't have cool parents. I didn't have an older sibling. I didn't have that cool kid who lived down the street who told you, like, here's the older friend who's like, here's what you need to listen to. Here's what you need to. So I came to everything a little bit late, and like I didn't get into comics until I was like 12, which is late for a kid. But I've got some pretty high functioning OCD, which what that means is like. If I like something, give me it all. Like a greatest hits compilation, go jump in a river. Get out of here, greatest hits. If I like your band, I want all of it. And comics were kind of the same way. But then I did a very typical comic fan thing, which is sometimes late teens, you kind of walk away from it, right? You grow up, whatever it is. And actually, the only two comics that I took into my 20s with me were Neil Gaiman's Sandman and Art Spiegelman's Mouse. And then I came back like in the early 2000s, and I've been like a collector and a reader ever since. I think as a collector and a reader, then when I was a kid, and even now, I'm literally 50-50 down the middle. Yes, I like my runs, and I like my key comics, and I like to collect them. I like shiny covers. Wait till you see some of my exclusives that are at Kickstarter. But like I'm an English teacher. Like I'm totally a history nerd. And I'm totally an English nerd.
So you have Mouse #1.
Do I have what?
Mouse.
Of course I have Mouse. Oh, you mean like I've got all the collected editions, right? Okay. Because I was but I don't have like any, like when it was serialized in Raw and stuff that Spielman was putting me out, like I don't have anything of that. That would be really cool, but I'm really a reader at heart too. So it's like over here you've got your your fancy rare issue of X, Y, and Z, but over here it's like my favorite writers, and I'm just following them and buying all their stuff because they're the best writers that are out there. Do you know what I mean? So it's very much if I got to pull Batman, it's very much a two-faced thing. It's like these two sides of
pretty phenomenal what you've done here. Like I'm really curious. I know that there's a bunch of people in the chat right now. I'm really curious what you have coming up, because hearing some of the background on you is incredible. So
I know.
What do we got? What is this?
Well, so this is my new project, and this is. It's got some, oh God, forgive me for saying this out. It's got some parallels to Parallel. Can't believe that just happened. I apologize. It happened anyway. And it's very much different as well. So
I'm
the similarity
intrigued
is from a structural standpoint, I'm the same writer who takes my comic fandom and make sure that the story is wrapped in one of our famous comic tropes, right? Parallel is a dark sci-fi tale, but at its core, it's these deeper themes that are universally relatable. Jane American is, I got to be careful how I say this because I don't want to give away a big cliffhanger, but you'll be able to follow it. Anybody who's ever read a comic in their entire life will be able to follow this. It is very much wrapped in the concept of somebody with abilities that are a little bit more than other people's, and maybe you've got to hide that, okay? That's a comic book trope. It's well-loved. It's well-trodden. But what that really gets at and what that wrapping paper is for are these much more poignant, deeper, and hopefully universal themes about identity, about gender, about self-worth, about allowing yourself to be who you actually are, right? It's that metaphor that I was very much inspired to write this by my late grandmother, who kind of fought against, not entirely successful, being put in that same box of societal expectations in post-World War II America, okay? There's a lot of family names in this book, so it's very personal to me on that respect. But it's also very much dedicated to every student who's gone through my classroom the last 23 years, who is in the 21st century, when this stuff should not be such a struggle anymore, are still struggling with their identity, right? Still struggling with a parent, a teacher, a society, peers who tell them because this is who they are, that's not right. And they feel restrained by that. Okay. So like that's who this book is inspired by. And that's what all those themes are actually really about. And what you're looking at is kind of like this. Well, let me put it to you this way. Okay. If you look at Jane as a character, so she's our 15-year-old protagonist, post-World War II America, 1946, right? Troops have come back home. Rosie the Rivers have been sent home, including her mom. And Jane's life at the opening of our book is filled with more than enough responsibility for a young girl coming of age in that wartime, small town America. Family tragedy, dad's not coming home, has changed her in some pretty unbelievable ways. That trauma has triggered something in her and allows her to do things that are probably left hidden. Okay. But the economic hardships of that presented at the end of the war have left her with a pretty intense choice. She can stay safe, she can stay hidden, or she can embrace who she really is for the sake of everybody that she loves. So that's
like Magneto
for that story. There's hints of that. I mean, tonally, you've got some Superman for All Seasons in here. You've got some Archie 1941. If you've read Magneto Testament, which it's so funny, which is like an origin story that Greg Pak wrote about Magneto. It might be my favorite X book of all time. It's very funny that you bring that up, Laura, because that wasn't on my mind. But if it wasn't subconsciously in there when I wrote this, I don't know what was, because it's got tones of that too, for sure. Nice. So we're looking at
that's good for me. I like it. So.
Yeah, we're looking at a 32-page one-shot full color comic book. It's kind of the introduction to Jane's world. It's exploring, like I said, the themes of identity, gender, self-worth, and those small-time societal norms in post-World War II America, right? My teaser line for you is this book, I promise you, is going to break your heart. It's going to make you cheer, and it's going to shock you with a cliffhanger ending that's going to have you begging for more.
Wow. Okay. So
because Annie Wright, my artist, 21 years old. This is her first book, and she is knocking it out of the park. I have been absolutely blown away by living a writer's dream with both of these books, working with artists at different points in their careers, but it's almost a cliche. Have you heard about that thing where an artist draws something and it's actually better than how you saw it in your head, which isn't supposed to be nothing, right?
That happens all the time.
If you go back to Greek philosophers, what's in your brain is supposed to be perfect. Anything out in the world is supposed to be less than whatever the vision is. And yet there's this magic that happens. Like there's these panels and pages that Adam drew for Parallel. There's this stuff that Annie's producing that is like, I'll tell you what, I teased you with that, like, make you cheer, break your heart thing. When she, okay, I got to be really careful here because I'll like lose it on air. She sent me the very first page she did has got this panel where Jane and her mom, May, are embracing, and May's in her Rosie the River outfit because this is taking place in 1942, and Jane's 12. And there's this embrace and just Annie has got an intuitive, uncanny ability to show emotion and expression in our figures. And because like when that page came in, you know, I'm thinking about my grandmother. My grandfather would have just about turned 99 years old at that point. He passed away a couple weeks ago. But like, this was like, he cried, I cried when we saw that panel, because like his.
So this is the panel right here.
It's let's see. It's not that one right there. It's the one that's on my banner. It's it's the one that's on the postcard too. It's like that right there. And if you look at that full panel and stuff, and you can just see it, you can see the love, you can see the affection on their faces, and it was gorgeous. And like my grandfather kept, like as he was declining, he kept the script next to his bedside. He had Annie's 5 pages on his iPad. And then when the 2 covers came in, that was kind of the last 2 things that he saw. And it was just something that like gave him, because his dream towards the end was to see his high school sweetheart's name in print. And, you know, I mean, they went on their first date when they were 14. And were together ever since, got married at 19, right before he went off to war. And then together until, you know, she passed away at 89. And that dude made it to 99 years old, a month and a week. And I'm doing this for them. He was part of the research process. Like, this takes place in historical Plymouth, Michigan, which is where I grew up. One of the main settings is this old wire factory called Wall Wire, which is a Plymouth factory that during wartime got a war contract, and it got converted to the place that made these things called Marsden mats, which were the temporary runways that went to the Pacific that the bombers took off from when they were island hopping. And my great-grandfather actually worked in that factory. And look, you can sit at your computer and you can do research. And I did a lot of that, right? Like when you see Annie's 5 pages on the Kickstarter on May 2nd, when it goes live, when you see an icebox in the background of the kitchen, when you see the style of phone on the wall, that was like meticulously researched to make sure that it's like a 1936 model, because this is not a rich family. So in 1942, they're not going to have new stuff, down to the smallest details.
That's clever.
You can do that with Google Images, right? What you can't do, but what we did, is at 98 years old, my grandfather and I found Wall Wire the week before it was torn down and segmented into office space. And it had been like stripped down to its bare studs. And we got in there and got a tour and got pictures and video of like all the original fixtures, all the original brickwork, the conveyor belts where those Marsden mats were moved, the train depot in the back, like all these settings that I had imagined in my head for the story. I now have like the real thing. And that, the history nerd in me gets very fired up about that. But like, I love, look, I have this firm belief as a writer that if you're going to ask your audience to suspend their disbelief for something, parallel version of yourself reaching out from the other side offering, right? Jane American, we've got a 15-year-old girl who can do things that other people can't. If I'm going to ask you to suspend your disbelief for that, I'm not going to cheat you on the real life stuff anywhere else on the page, even if it's not something I know about, right? You go back to Parallel, and there's these scenes where our main character's in a coma, where he's in the back of an ambulance. I could have done that thing where you kind of make up, I heard it on ER, I heard it on Grey's Anatomy, I'll just spit some of that stuff out. I wasn't comfortable with that. If there's one doctor that read my book and it's like, bull crap, I'm out.
Hey, you got to be careful. You got to know your art, right? Like that's part of the gig, is knowing what you're talking about and illustrating it. And
so I call my cousin, the doctor in Boston, and she helps me write that dialogue.
Perfect.
For this stuff, like all it would take, it would break my heart if some pedantic nerd sent me an Instagram message that said, that phone didn't come out until 1955. How dare you? And I've been like, oh God. So I made sure it was a 1936 phone. You know what I mean? So I've dug the research process, but I'm also like, I want it to be right.
Okay. So here, he had Sina Grace.
Yep, Sina Grace.
Edward. So what are part of the books? What do they do? Like what are they
So
helping?
one of the ways the comic industry these days is very much variant crazy, which is like a fancy cover or a different cover that makes your book more rare, blah, 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 blah. I love it and hate it at the same time, but I'm very excited about these ones. And that's one way to make your Kickstarter very unique. So like the covers for the Jane American Kickstarter, it's the only place you're ever going to be able to get them on the planet. If and when this book gets published beyond the Kickstarter, it'll be a different cover. And you will not be able to get the art that these two superstars produced for it, except for here. So that's one of the draws of coming and checking this thing out, signing up for it right now, and then getting that alert on May 2nd and backing it. So Cena's pretty darn famous for getting his start by being Robert Kirkman's editor on The Walking Dead and kind of running Skybound for him for years. And then going off and doing fantastic books like, a little book called Iceman for X-Men, bunch of X-Men covers. He's doing a Superman book right now. And he did this. I'm going to tell you about his cover in a minute. But Malia's got the main cover, and you see a little tease of it up there on the screen. It's gorgeous. It's like her modern style meets a Norman Rockwell painting meets 1942, art plastered up on the wall. Very Rosie the Riveter inspired. And her cover is going to be one of our exclusives. And then I got two more. I got a very limited textless variant that's just very clean and pretty that you can only get the first few days of the campaign. And then if I've got any old school 90s comic nerds out there listening, there is going to be a chromium cover of hers, which is like a shiny cover that people geek out about. And I absolutely love, and I can't help it because that was my jam. And like when I was 13. And then the Cena cover has got me super excited too. So Garrett Gunn named this cover the Granddad's Attic variant. And the reason it's called that is because it's like an homage to a Tintin cover from like the 1940s, 1950s. And my letter designer, Dave Lentz, did a treatment on it, a dressing on it that's called, you call it like vintaging it. And it looks really aged. So like you see spine ticks on it. You can see like old stains on it. It looks like a really old comic. And then that's cool. But what's awesome, and I don't even fully understand it myself, but I'm really excited about it. The place I'm going to get it printed through has got this printing process called a soft touch laminate. Okay. And a soft touch laminate gives your book almost like a suede feel. And when you combine that with the aging of it, the fake aging of it, the book is going to look and feel like it's been in your grandparents' attic since 1945. And it's like this really unique kind of experience. And for like the collectors out there, it's just going to blow their minds. And I can't wait to get that into people's hands.
That sounds pretty cool. I'm excited to see it. So what day you said it was?
So it goes live on May 2nd. So what you can do right now is you can go to Kickstarter.com and you search Jane American. It's the first one that pops up. And it's got some a little piece of art up there, and then you click this green button that says notify me upon launch. And my understanding about Kickstarter is the more of those you have, the better chance you have at success. Because I don't know how much everybody knows about Kickstarter, but it's kind of the way 99% of independent comics are produced in the 21st century. But it's also this terrifying prospect where you meet your funding goal, and if you're 1 penny short, you get nothing. And that is very scary. So it's like you hit your goal and your book goes out in the world. You miss your goal by 1 penny, and it's like, wow, too bad, so sad. Good luck next time.
Oh wow! I didn't know that's how it was. I
didn't know yeah. So like that stress is real. I am feeling it. I'm losing sleep over that, plus some other things. But oh my goodness gracious!
So you're gonna have any? Are you gonna have like? Can you tell us a little bit like what is it called? Like tiers? Like how many?
Yeah. So Kickstarter automatically gives you hey, I'm an altruistic soul. You look like a good person. I just like to donate money to your cause. I don't even need anything back from you. They automatically put that one in. That one sits at the top. I don't think a lot of people do that, but maybe a good Samaritan rolls around every once in a while, and I don't know. Who knows? And then we've got our lowest tier of support is pretty standard in most print publishing things, and that's you get your digital copy, right? So digital copy is the first tier, and that's $5 to back the project. I will send you the PDF as soon as it is ready, with the Malia exclusive cover, and you can always donate more. That is one of the cool things. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling generous today. Here's $7 instead of 5. But you can do whatever you want. But that 5 is that one. The next level up is the Malia cover, the exclusive cover at 20, and then we've got her chromium cover, we've got her very limited and time limited textless variant, we've got the Cena Granddad's Attic cover. I've got a pretty cool. I've got one where you get a little bit of discount if you want all the variant covers. There's add-ons, which means if you support at this level, but you'd like to add on another book, because like there's collectors out there who want one for the bag and one to read. All those options are there. I've got a retailer incentive, right, which like gets some variants and some bonus things into retailers' hands and lets them put it on their shelf and make a profit. And then probably my favorite tier, and you've got to want this one, okay? But maybe my it's my highest tier, but it gets you all the books, and then you will get your name and likeness in the 120-page full story graphic novel. That is the plan, is to follow this. So eventually we'll be in contact. You send me your picture. I'll tell you about what age your character is going to be. And then you send me a picture of you at 16 or you at 25 or whatever that character is going to be. And you will be in the book. It'll be your name. It'll be your likeness. It'll be in the 1940s. And my favorite part about this is, and I warn you right in the tier, I'm like, for some people, this is actually a selling point, but fair warning, 99% chance that you are going to be a protagonist, if not outright villain, if you buy in at this level. So it's your name and your likeness, but you are not going to be a very nice person to our protagonist, which for some people are like, yeah, bring it on. Give me that notoriety.
That's funny. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool. That's cool. Like you will be to be in the book. That's awesome.
Listen, I want to be completely honest with you guys. From a creator standpoint, something that's always been really, really important to me while I'm writing, while I'm promoting, while I'm building my first Kickstarter, like whatever it is, has been bang for your buck, because that was important. That's been important to me as a fan, right? Rereadability, massively important to me as a fan. And something that I would want to experience, something that I would want to read. Parallel Special Edition, which is out there in the world right now. We didn't really talk about this new version of the book, is a special edition with 50 bonus pages. And like, if anybody who's ever read comic books in trade paperback format before knows that sometimes the back matter, the bonus material in the back, is just there to fluff out the page count and allow you to bump up your cover price. And like, that always bummed me out. I always felt a little ripped off. So like, I made sure, like I personally curated those 50 pages. I made sure everything in there was like, they're all bangers. It's all like really fun stuff that you want to read in a bonus story in the cover gallery. And I mean, the annotations for even like the boring script pages are me yapping and telling weird stories instead of this art comes from this page and that kind of thing, as most of it is. I'm literally telling you how this scene was written on a piece of paper with a pen at a street fair in Royal Oak, Michigan. When my wife went into a shop to check it out, I got hit with the bolt of lightning and sat down on a street corner as hipsters are whipping beanbags past my face playing Bago in the street. And I don't care. I'm almost getting hit by Bago beanbags. And I'm like, I got to write the scene down. So like, that's what you're hearing in the annotated script pages instead of just, this is where this is from.
Jen, do you have any questions? I feel like you've been like listening a lot.
Jen, you got to get in on this. I'm talking too much. My mouth is dry. Talk to me.
What do you got? What do you got, Jen?
Ask me a tough question. I deal with 8th graders all day. I'm gonna be fine.
I mean, I really like the idea of having the texturized paper.
Yeah.
That you don't see that very often.
It's so weird. It's like, it doesn't look super different. Like I remember I took a tour. So the place I'm having this printed at is actually in Plymouth, Michigan. So it's a local printer, which is where the story takes place, which is where I grew up. It's like kind of like weird how that came together. And I went in there for my tour, and Melanie, who's doing customer service, is like, we've got this stuff called soft touch laminate. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she's like, let me show you. I'm like, this doesn't look any different. And then I touch it. I was like, oh. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, oh. And then it was actually Garrett. I drove up to Source Point headquarters over my spring break, and I was hanging out with Garrett, and he was giving me a tour of the warehouse. And I was picking up my copies of Parallel so I could, I'm taking them to Free Comic Book Day, a signing that I'm doing, and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, and we're talking about the variants, and he's like, oh, you know what you do is you get Dave to age it, and you put that soft touch laminate on it, and you call it Granddad's Attic, and then you've got Chef's Kiss. And I'm like, thank you, Garrett. Yes, you are the idea man, as you guys know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean,
he's all right.
Everybody make sure to go and look for Jane American. And Douglas, tell people where they can find you.
So you can find me on Instagram at jdouglaswrites. As you can see right there, you cannot miss me. That's me in my hospital gown the day after I had colon cancer surgery, because I had to try to win recovery. So I was like doing laps and flexing in the hallway with my IV. So that's how you find me there. Hit me up there. DM me, ask me questions, whatever. I will talk your ear off.
I have a question, Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a backside of that photo?
You don't want to see that. Listen, I'll tell you what. When I was 18, when I was 22, maybe. But in my 40s, listen, we all have enough trauma in our lives. You'll be scarred. You'll be scarred. You won't. You might go blind. You don't want that. Listen, so like literally 44 years of almost perfect health. And then I've just fallen apart in the last couple of years, right? Colon cancer, torn meniscus knee surgery. How did I get my torn meniscus in my knee? Did I save a kid, like dive in front of a car? No, I knelt on the ground helping a kid with an essay, and it just went bleh. Nothing, just terrible. I used to run before my
You're
knees.
a writer. Change that story. Be like, I was in battle. I was in a bar fight. I mean, come on, be creative.
Laura, I used to run like 5 nights a week. But I wasn't a runner. I was a swimmer growing up, and it's not pretty to see me run, so I only run at night just to shield people's eyes from seeing this weirdly shaped body undulating in the night. Just so you could, in the shadows, I was protecting people, and you do not want to see what's behind that gown.
Okay, fine. No. I thought it'd be a cool variant. That's fine.
You'd have to put it. You would have to put that variant in like the back room of video stores from the 1990s, the weird saloon doors, and then in a section behind that.
On that note, bottom of the week.
Okay, Jason. So I asked you for a quote or something, and you sent me the couple of the.
I did. I sent you a couple of my grandma's quotes.
Yes, and this one I just loved it. Can you please read it?
My grandmother, whenever you would put on a pouty face, she would literally just walk up to you and say, "No pouting, or a little bird will land on your nose and go doo-doo on your lip." And she would just like poke it in, just poke it right back in. You had to be in a good mood after that. You were not allowed to have a sour puss on in my grandmother's house.
This is a very graphic photo for this.
Yeah, I didn't choose that photo, but it's definitely the nightmare that was in my head at like 6 years old, and probably the motivating reason why I didn't pout around my grandmother.
My son right now, my 6-year-old Robbie, right now, everything, if he doesn't get his way, and I'm gonna tell him this, because this is, I think it's so funny. He's gonna hate it. He's gonna hate it. Right now, my thing, because he got into the, it wasn't me, his little, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. So I tell him now, liars get spiders. And then be like, well, I kind of,
What do you mean
I just said liars get spiders. So
it's terrifying.
Oh yeah, keep it vague and ambiguous. That's, if it's ambiguous, it's even worse.
So he now, that's how I get the truth out of him. And he has got me back a couple times when I'll tell him something, and then he knows that I'm not telling. He's like,
Tell him to
"Mom,
stick out his tongue. Like
Huh?
if your tongue's purple, you're lying. And my mom would do that to me, and I'd be like, I'm like not wanting to show my tongue, and that's how you know they're lying. Just do try that. That's better than arachnophobia
No.
10 years.
Yeah, so so this is gonna be yeah, I'm gonna have to use this.
Oh, take it. My grandmother would be more than proud to know that you are keeping lips tucked in well into the 21st century.
That is hilarious.
Her
Oh
legacy
my God,
continues, right?
That's right.
Laura, that's the new person.
Yeah. When we were on Facebook, we used to do that. We would do like a wheel, and it would be like bird shit if you didn't get an extra $1 off back in the day.
That's funny. Well,
Yeah.
Jason, it was amazing having you here, telling us about your Kickstarter. And anything you guys want to add before we go?
I will add one little tiny thing to whoever's watching. Make sure that you share this out, and better yet, like what Jason was saying earlier, turn on your notifications. It is a very vulnerable thing to put a Kickstarter up. You have to really rely on people liking what you're putting out and liking it enough to back it. I think it's very brave of you to do it, Jason. I wish you nothing but the best, and
Thank
we will
you.
do everything that we can to promote too. It goes live on May 2nd, but if you have your notifications on, you don't have to rely on your memory to remember. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
So that's my
Yeah.
thing. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
your charm and your grace. And you guys are a lot of fun. And this was a blast. I truly, truly appreciate all of you.
No, thank you. Jen, do you want to add anything? No, I love it.
That's Jen. There you go.
Yeah, thank you again. And yeah, let us know, tag us, and we'll be sharing, whatever we can do to help, the community. Like, we like to help out. And I'm excited for this. I can't wait to read it. Definitely backing this up because I want one of those covers. That's what you
I'll close out with this. So this has nothing to do with any financial gain on my part. None of the goal goes to me. It's all to pay for printing. It's all to pay for my artists. It's all to pay for fulfillment. It's about getting this story that means so much to me and to my family and to the legacy of my grandmother out into the world. In fact, if we go beyond our goal, which would obviously be my dream, hit some of our really cool stretch goals, in fact, every penny of that just goes to fund the much larger book that comes afterwards, right? Because that's even a bigger hill to climb. And the long-term goal of this that I really need everybody to understand, and really the dream all along, as personal as a story as Parallel was to get out in the world, it was really always about getting here so that one day the 120-page graphic novel exists and it's living in classrooms, it's living in libraries, it's on people's bookshelves. And that really, that positive message of being who you are, right, through the eyes of a 15-year-old girl gets out in the world, because I just think people need to hear that, because like I said, even in the 21st century, like so many of my kids just were like, I don't feel comfortable yet. And it's just not fair. And you extrapolate it back to 1946 when my grandmother was going through it. And it's just something that I think we need to examine a bit more closely and get more spotlight on.
Awesome.
Amen to that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And
thank you.
make sure you follow Jason and leave your comments. If you guys have any questions or anything, let us know. And I hope everybody has an amazing weekend. And thank you. Thank you for another great Friday night.
Good stuff.
Have a good night, guys. Bye.
Bye.